Well, the spate of violence against children in the country has once again thrown focus on weaknesses in our child protection services. And this violence is being fueled by substance abuse, easy access to weapons and exposure to crime. Women and children's rights activist Karen Pillay joins us on the line from Johannesburg. Now, good afternoon, Karen, and thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk.
Thank you very much, Keshni, and thank you to SABC Channel 404 for highlighting the social issues that are destroying the moral fabric of our society.
Karen, can you tell us how the fragmented services received by child victims are potentially more damaging to long-term physical and emotional well-being of children in these situations?
So, Keshni, what happens is children, the cases are reported to SABC, but you don't see a coordinated approach, a collaboration between the three critical units, which is SABC, social services, Department of Health. In fact, there's more than that, and maybe child psychologists. You don't see that closing of the gap so that we have a good case that can, with enough evidence, that can bring these perpetrators to justice.
Karen, we know that poverty doesn't necessarily equate to violence, but it is true that our less affluent or poor communities make headlines for violent crimes against women and children. Could you please just elaborate for us on that link between inequitable access to health, education and social services, and talk to us about this link between poverty, social services and violence that we are seeing playing out in so many areas of our country right now?
Sure. I think we need to look at how predators are targeting poor communities, especially single-parent households, where it's just the mum and her children, and they're relying on social security grants to sustain their families. When these men come into their lives, it alleviates some of the financial burden with them, and women become oblivious to the real intentions of these perpetrators. So even if a child complains, the mother doesn't, the family doesn't take action immediately and takes it through to social services and, calls in SABC or gets the child the necessary access to justice, care and support that is critical to the child surviving and becoming a functional adult. Many of the adults with mental illnesses that are surfacing now and they are dysfunctional adults have tracked back to their childhood, being sexually violated and abused in their childhood.
Karen, so how then do we begin to turn the tide and prioritize these areas? Because it becomes crucial, isn't it, that we begin to shift attitudes and priorities of policymakers into improving and growing children's services, especially for the poorest children in our nation?
Absolutely. I think so what should happen, I think social services used to have parenting skills. Because of because of the lack of budget, the lack of resources, and overburdened social system, parenting skills is not given priority, because you've got young mothers that are battling multiple social challenges, and you find that parenting skills the lack of parenting skills, understanding how to bring up a child in the socio-economic environment that the environment that they live in, is contributing to this. So I believe that we need to look at how are we allocating services, what are the key role players and partnerships, whether it's public-private partnerships, whether it is with civil society, that these critical government departments can link to, collaborate with, and make sure that children get these services. And I'm talking across the board, from primary school, from grade R, because if a teacher is capacitated, or if a childcare worker or ECD practitioner is capacitated to look to identify signs where a child is being abused, then this child will get the necessary assistance that the child requires, because somebody, somewhere along the social line, has picked need for services for the child.
Karen, I just want to pick up on a point you've mentioned there, a lack of parenting skills in the country. We've had 2 cases of child neglect that made headlines this week that we covered right here on the SABC news desk. You know, it becomes such a challenge because how do you start to address a lack of parenting skills when the country is still struggling with one of the highest rates of father absenteeism on the globe? And this is due to a variety of factors, including the cruel migratory labor system and the legacy of our divisive past and the apartheid era legacy that we're still struggling with.
And this is very prevalent, Keshni, in vulnerable communities, in poor communities, because there's these communities, absentee fathers are prevalent in these communities. So it's single-headed households where the mom has to go out and work. And I think in these communities, we don't only have to have parenting skills with the mom, but you have to have with the caregivers, the older children, community members, the Gogos, people that can, the extended community that can support children. For example, the 2 children that were burnt, had they not been left at home, had they been left with a caregiver, obviously somebody that knows, that has good parenting skills, that understands children and how to properly bring up a child in this context, they would be vigilant and be, cognizant of what a child needs so that we can save our children. I think critical as well is that we need to look at what is the victim's charter. How do we implement it in our homes, in our communities, for child survivors? How do we prepare children around understanding if a perpetrator comes to them, and they use codes of silence to say, I will kill your parents or your mom, I will kill you, or it's a game between us, keep it a secret. We need to educate and create awareness on how do we break these codes, silence codes,
Karen,
for parents and caregivers.
Thank you, Karen. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We are out of time. That was an independent development practitioner and women's and children's rights activist, Karen Pillay, joining us on the line from Johannesburg.